Hello, this is Tip Top Gaming here today with another MTG Throne of Eldraine spoiler video. Why don't we hop right into this, because I believe there are a lot of spoilers today. First, we have Mistford River Turtle. It's a 4-cost 1/5 creature turtle. Turtles are always fun. Not really. Whenever Mistford Turtle attacks, another target attacking non-human creature can't be blocked this turn. Yeah, I guess that's okay. I think it might work well in limited, because obviously there are a ton of creature types that aren't human. And this, I guess it might work well in limited. I'm not sure. I don't think it's that powerful. However, you will notice a theme today of things like liking non-humans. Next, we have Mirror Maid. This is a 3-cost enchantment. You may have Mirror Maid enter the battlefield as a copy of any artifact or enchantment on the battlefield. So this is very similar to a card such as Copy Enchantment or Copy Artifact. I like this card. The only thing is, unlike a creature where, most decks are going to run creatures, and you can guarantee that your deck's pretty much going to have a creature because they make up a majority of your deck, at least basic Magic does, or at least how Magic was meant to be played is. However, artifacts and enchantments are not the exact same, or they're not the same as creatures. Not every deck runs them, so this is a little bit less useful there. However, if your opponent gets out some really powerful artifact or enchantments like Omniscience, and then you can just have this enter the battlefield as a copy of Omniscience, then that's kind of interesting. So I think it's interesting. I don't know how good it will be. It might be a sideboard card because artifact and enchantment synergy is a thing inside of Throne of Eldraine. Next, we have Vantress Gargoyle, which is a 2-cost 5/4 flying artifact creature gargoyle. It can't attack unless defending player has 7 or more cards in their graveyard. This is, I believe, the second time we've seen this ability, so it looks like that'll be kind of a theme throughout the set. And then Vantress can't block unless you have 4 or more cards in your hand, and then you can tap him to make each player put the top card of their library into their graveyard. So this would definitely go in something like a mill deck, I think. I mean, turn 3, you could easily get 7 cards in the graveyard. Speaking of mill, we have Folio of Fancies, which is a 2-cost artifact that says players have no maximum hand size, and then you can pay double X, and each player draws X cards. That includes your opponent. However, you can pay 3, and each opponent puts a number of cards equal to the number of cards in their hand from the top of their library into their graveyard. So, this could be a good answer to something like Risen Reef, where you stuff your hand, especially if they have no maximum hand size. They won't be discarding those cards, so they'll be keeping them, and then they'll have basically their whole deck, and then you can completely mill them. I think this card is okay. However, unless it's in a very specific deck, it's not like a card that would fit in any blue deck. It has to specifically go into a mill deck, I believe. Obviously. Next is the Magic Mirror. It's a 9-cost legendary artifact, Mythic. This spell costs 1 less to cast for each instant and sorcery in your graveyard. So, caring about instant and sorceries in your graveyard, that was a deck. That was, is it Drakes and is it Phoenix, really, kind of there. And then it says you have no maximum hand size, which is always fun. And then at the beginning of your upkeep, put a knowledge counter on Magic Mirror. Then draw a card for each counter on Knowledge Mirror. So, if you can find a way to dump spells into your graveyard, for instance, something like Chart of Course, which is rotating out, but in Historic, you could play Chart of Course, discarding a card. Now you just drew 2 spells, or drew 2 cards, and then put 2 spells in the graveyard. Now this is only a 7-cost, and so you can really easily get a bunch of spells in the graveyard. You could cast this for 3 really early on. I think this could be very powerful, and depending on if I pull a couple of them, because I'm not going to spend a lot of wild cards on just a little fun deck, or at least mythic ones, I might make a deck around this, because this is a fun card. Yeah. Next, we have Revenge of the Ravens. It's a 4-cost enchantment. Whenever a creature attacks you or a planeswalker you control, that creature's controller loses 1 life and you gain 1 life. So it really, this is a good counter to something like Knight's decks as they try to flood and overwhelm you. They can, but it's a lot harder because, for every creature they're attacking with, they're taking a damage and you're healing 1. So this card might as well say 1/1s can't attack as well, because it's very counterintuitive. So yeah, I like this card. I think it will find its place in a couple sideboards, maybe. Next, we have Oathsworn Knight. It's a 3-cost 0/0 creature human knight. and it enters the battlefield with 4+1/+1 counters on it. It attacks each combat if able, and if damage would be dealt to it, while it has a +1/+1 counter on it, prevent that damage and remove a +1/+1 counter. So that is similar to another card. I don't remember what it's from, but every time you play a land, it gets a counter, and it has that same bottom ability. This is obviously worse. However, it's not in green, it's in black, and it comes out earlier. I think this card has potential in something like a Knight's deck. However, without the ability to give it more counters, this card will quickly die. However, you might be able to do something with Knights and humans. So, I don't know. We'll have to see. Next, we have Barging, which is a 1-cost combat ambush. It's a instant, and target attacking creature gets +2/+2 until end of turn. Each attacking non-human creature gains trample until end of turn. I think this is crazy, especially in something like a draft where you might end up with a bunch of 6/6s without trample. Well, you just paid 1 and gave all of them trample, or all of the non-human ones at least, trample, and then a creature of your choice gets +2/+2, and if that's not a human, then they also get trample. So this is really good for 1. I think this will be really good in limited, as most boost spells are, and I think this could end up in some standard decks. However, I don't know. Next, we have Redcap Raiders, which is a 3-cost 3/2, and whenever it attacks, you may tap an untapped non-human creature you control. If you do, it gets +1/+1 and gains trample. So again, non-human synergy, trample, all that. Again, if you're going to build a non-human deck, I guess this would go in it, but I don't see that really being a deck. I see that more as a limited strategy. Next, we have Ferocity of the Wilds. Attacking non-human creatures you control get +1/+0 and have trample. I think this could make its way into a lot of decks outside of Standard, because while non-humans will be, I think, a limited strategy, a lot of cards aren't humans. I know there are a lot of cards that are humans, but a lot of cards aren't. Goblins, blah, 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 all that, and it only costs 3, and it gives them trample, which I think is kind of crazy. So I think this will see some play outside of limited. Next, we have Bonecrusher Giant. It's a 3-cost giant with the adventure mechanic. You can pay 2, it's an instant, and damage can't be prevented this turn. And then it deals 2 damage to any target. So that's, okay. It's a 2-cost thing that, it's okay. And then whenever Bonecrusher Giant becomes the target of a spell, it deals 2 damage to that spell's controller. Now, for instance, if you can play both Stomp and Bonecrusher Giant on the same turn, and then for some reason your opponent decides to target with a spell, that damage can't be prevented because it's all damage. That also includes damage coming at you. So, for instance, if you play this at instant speed to kill something and then try to fog, that doesn't work. So, make sure you're smart about things when playing this card. Next, we have in Krag Defeat. It's a 4-cost sorcery, red sorcery rare, and it says add 7 red mana. You can cast only 1 more spell this turn. So you up your mana by 3, but you can only cast 1 more spell. I guess that could be useful. In a lot of sets, there's this one really big, dumb red mythic that's kind of useless because it's really expensive. I guess this could help you get it. It's triple red. I'm surprised this isn't one of their, if you paid 3 red mana for, and then this became not triple red. But I guess it's interesting. I don't think it's going to see much play. It would have to be in a mono red deck that plays really big red creatures, which doesn't seem to be what red is going to be doing. Next, we have Fierce Witchstalker. It's a 4-cost 4/4 with trample, and when it enters the battlefield, create a food token. Again, I can't really judge food tokens until I see all of the food cards, which I will probably do a video going over literally every card that says the word food in it, and analyzing them there. But for now, I can't say much. Next, we have Wolf's Quarry. It's a 6-cost, and it says create 3/1/1 green boar creature tokens with when this creature dies, create a food token. I think this is pretty useless. When you really think about it, you get 3 chump blockers, and if you want the food, you have to get them killed. So you have to pay 6 mana, get 3 creatures killed to get 3 food for 6 at sorcery speed. I think if this was instant, it still wouldn't see play, but it'd be at least better. I think this is pretty garbage. I guess unless you can clone this, but honestly, it's not borderline. It is unplayable. Next, we have this card, and obviously all of you can read that, but just in case, I added the English translations. We have Countryside Villa. It's a land plains, and whenever it enters the battlefield, it enters the battlefield tapped unless you control 3 or more other planes. If it enters the battlefield untapped, put a +1/+1 counter on target creature you control. I could maybe see this going in a plains deck, in a mono white deck. However, I'm not a big fan of this cycle of lands. I believe they did say that there was going to be a rare land cycle, which we haven't seen any of yet, but it wouldn't be dual lands, which I think is kind of interesting because they the thingamabobber. Oh my god, why can't I think of it? The Knights deck is like 3 colors, and right now with very little, or at least fewer sets legal, it's kind of hard to do that. I figured they would add the other 5 Skylands, but I guess they're not. They might save that for the next core set. Maybe that'll be core sets things, or the temples. Next, we have Stonecoil Serpent. It's an X-cost artifact creature snake. Remember, Steel Overseer, tap, put a counter on everything, so you gotta be careful with anything that's an artifact creature. It has Reach and Trample. It has protection from multicolored, and it enters the battlefield with X +1/+1 counters on it. This is an amazing card. We have Ugin's Conjurant right now, which is an X cost, and it enters the battlefield with X +1/+1 counters on it. It's not an artifact, which I mean makes it less less killable, since, you know, destroy target artifact would destroy this. However, it doesn't have reach, it doesn't have trample, it loses counters, it doesn't have protection from multicolor. So overall, this is just so much better, especially because it has artifacts. That also makes it better because, of course, that one Steel Overseer that can add more counters to it. So that's pretty good. Next, we have Grumgully the Generous. Each other non-human creature you control enters the battlefield with an additional +1/+1 counter on it. I guess this could go in a Krenko deck. I mean, he is a goblin. He fits that theme, and all goblins are non-human, so I guess that is completely possible. Again, it's, I guess, yeah, today's been kind of non-human day. Probably what I titled the video. Next, we have Lock Dragon. It's a red-blue. It's kind of hard to say. It's a creature dragon, 3/2 with flying, and when it enters the battlefield or attacks, you may discard a card. If you do, draw a card. I think this is a decent card. They said they wanted mono-colored drafting to be, like, popular or possible with this set, and so this cycle kind of is helping with that. I think that this will be played in limited. However, you do have to have the card to discard, so obviously it doesn't say discard a card then draw a card, but it's but if you can't discard a card, you don't get to draw. Next, we have Dance of the Manse. Manse. Either way, it's a blue white X spell. Oh great. Return up to X target artifacts and or non-aura enchantments cards with converted mana cost X or less from your graveyard to the battlefield. If X is 6 or more, those permanents are 4/4s. So artifact synergy, enchantment synergy, which are both limited things in this, but it looks like they're trying to encourage people to play artifacts and enchantments. So if those decks take off, I think this card will too. It turns them right to the battlefield. Yeah. Next, we have Fair Borough Elder. It's a 3-cost 0/0 with Vigilance, and it gets +1/+1 for each color among permanents you control. And then you tap and add, for each color among permanents you control, add 1 mana of that color. So I think if you're going to play a Wooburg deck or a white, blue, black, or red, green deck, this will totally be in it, because you could theoretically tap it for 5 mana turn 4. I mean, you could turn 1 play a red card, turn 2 play a blue, what is the color missing? Blue black card, and then turn 3 play this, and boom, you just add 5 mana with this the next turn. So, and it's a 5/5. So I think this would totally go in a high multicolor deck, but with a bunch of lands cycling out, I don't see this being very popular right now. Either way, I hope you guys enjoyed this video. If you did, hit that like button, subscribe, and of course, check out from the next spoiler video and more news videos so you can stay up to date with everything MTG. See you guys in the next one. Bye.